Chapter 1 The Best Archer. Me and my family. Before we begin, a hero is someone who is liked by many people for his acts of goodness, kindness, or bravery. However, there are many who hate such heroes because of their selfish and greedy reasons. Read about the classic hero Robin Hood's story, who robbed rich people in order to help the poor. One fine morning in Nottingham, one of the sheriff's men came riding through the town. He took out a poster from his bag and pasted it on a wall. A little boy was watching him. As soon as he left, the boy took the poster and ran off into the woods. "Where's Robin Hood?" he shouted to the people as he ran through Sherwood Forest. The boy was looking for Robin Hood, the best archer in all of England. Robin Hood was the leader of a men's group called the Merry Men. They all lived in the forest and wore green jackets. The boy soon found him. Robin Hood took the poster from the boy and read it. "Boys, we are going to Nottingham," he called out to his group. "The sheriff is holding an archery contest in 3 days, and the prize is a shining silver arrow." "We shouldn't go. It's a trap. He's trying to capture you," said one of his men. "Don't worry, he'll never capture me," Robin Hood answered confidently. Robin Hood was once a loyal nobleman. The king was fighting wars in far-off lands, and he had left his brother, the prince, to rule in his absence. But the prince was an evil man. He took away the lands of all the loyal noblemen. After Robin Hood's lands were taken away, he escaped into the forest. There he found other people whom the prince had mistreated, and he taught them archery and fencing. The sheriff of Nottingham hated Robin Hood and the Merry Men because they robbed from the rich and helped the poor. He wanted to capture Robin Hood and imprison him forever. But Robin Hood could not be caught. The archery contest was the sheriff's latest plan. Robin Hood will not be able to resist participating in an archery tournament. I will imprison him and his merry men when they come to compete, he said. "Capture anyone who's wearing green," he ordered his men. On the day of the contest, the sheriff stood looking for the merry men, but there was no sign of them. Finally, his chief officer said, "We must begin the match now. The people are getting impatient." The sheriff unwillingly started the contest anyway. Many people had come to watch the contest. They all cheered when an arrow hit close to the target. Everyone kept expecting Robin Hood to show up. There were archers in red, blue, black, brown, and even purple, but no one wore green. Soon there were only 2 archers left. One wore red and the other wore blue. They were both very good. The spectators grew more excited. Some cheered for the red jacket, others cheered for blue. Finally, the man in the red jacket won the contest. The people cheered loudly as he went to receive his prize from the sheriff. "You are lucky that Robin Hood and his merry men were too afraid to come here. You have won only because those cowards are not here," he said. The man in the red jacket accepted the silver arrow respectfully from the sheriff. Then, turning to the sheriff's guards, he said, "Since the sheriff says there is one better than I don't deserve it. I will shoot this precious arrow as far as it can go. The finder may keep it." As soon as he shot the arrow, all the sheriff's greedy guards ran off, leaving the sheriff with the two archers. The sheriff was about to leave when the man in the blue jacket stepped forward and tied his hands. At the same time, the winner in the red jacket threw his jacket off and revealed his green outfit. Robin Hood and his merry men took the sheriff as their prisoner and went away to Sherwood Forest. "You are worth many silver arrows, Sheriff. I will get my reward from the king as soon as he returns," said Robin Hood happily. Chapter 2: Peter's Lost Shadow. Before we begin, you must have noticed that wherever you go, your shadow follows you. Depending on the light, the shape, size and darkness of the shadow varies, but it never disappears completely. The shadow is bound to follow you no matter where you go. How would you feel if your shadow is lost somewhere? Would you bother to look for it? Peter Pan is a magical boy who never grows up. He lives in Neverland and often comes to visit the Darling family, Mrs. and Mr. Darling, and their children Wendy, Michael, and John, without them knowing about it. One evening, when Peter is sitting by the window of a room in the Darling home, the window is blown shut. Peter escapes, but his shadow is trapped inside. Tinker Bell, a fairy who is Peter's friend, tells him that his shadow is shut in a drawer inside the room. The window was blown open by the strong wind. Peter rushes into the room through the open window to find his lost shadow. He jumped at the drawers, scattering their contents to the floor with both hands. Soon he found his shadow inside the drawer. Peter had thought that he and his shadow, when brought near each other, would join like drops of water. But he was shocked when this did not happen. He tried to stick on his shadow using soap from the bathroom, but that also failed. Peter sat on the floor and cried. His sobs woke Wendy, and she sat up in bed. She was not worried to see a stranger crying in her room. She was only pleasantly interested. "Boy," she said politely, "why are you crying?" Peter could be polite too, having learned manners at fairy ceremonies. He rose and bowed to her beautifully. She was much pleased and bowed beautifully to him from the bed. "What's your name?" he asked. "Wendy Moira Angela Darling," she replied with some satisfaction. "What is your name?" "Peter Pan." "Is that all?" she asked him. "Yes," he said rather sharply. For the first time, he felt that his name was a shortish name. "I'm so sorry," said Wendy. "It doesn't matter," Peter gulped. She asked where he lived. "Second to the right," Peter said, "and then straight on till morning." "What a funny address!" Wendy laughed a bit. For the first time, Peter felt that perhaps it was a funny address. "No, it isn't," he said. "I mean," Wendy said nicely, remembering that she was the hostess. "Is that what they put on the letters?" "Don't get any letters," Peter said disapprovingly. "But your mother gets letters?" "Don't have a mother," he said. "Oh, no wonder you were crying," she said, and got out of bed and went to him. "I wasn't crying about mother," he said rather angrily. "I was upset because I can't get my shadow to stick on. Besides, I wasn't crying. It has come off? Yes. Then it must be sewn on. I shall sew it on for you, my little man, she said, though he was as tall as herself. She took out her sewing box and with a needle started sewing the shadow onto Peter's foot. I dare say it will hurt a little, she warned him. Oh, I shan't cry, said Peter, who believed that he had never cried in his life. He clenched his teeth and did not cry, and soon his shadow started behaving normally, though it was still a little creased. Perhaps I should have ironed it, Wendy said thoughtfully. But Peter was indifferent to appearances and was now jumping about in the wildest glee. He had already forgotten that Wendy was the cause of his happiness. He thought he had attached the shadow himself. How clever I am! He cried rapturously. Oh, the cleverness of me!
My dear land of storybooks, before we begin, storybooks are like a window of adventure from the comfort of one's place. Most children enjoy reading stories that are full of exciting stories of far-off lands. Let's read this poem about a child's dear land of storybooks. At evening, when the lamp is lit, around the fire my parents sit. They sit at home and talk and sing, and do not play at anything. Now with my little gun I crawl, all in the dark along the wall, and follow round the forest track, away behind the sofa back. There in the night where none can spy, all in my hunter's camp I lie, and play at books that I have read, till it is time to go to bed. These are the hills, these are the woods, these are my starry solitudes, and there the river by whose brink the roaring lions come to drink. I see the others far away, as if in firelit camp they lay, and I, like an Indian scout, around their party prowled about. So when my nurse comes in for me, home I return across the sea, and go to bed with backward looks at my dear land of storybooks.
Chapter 3. The Deserving Priest. Before we begin, you are on your way to school on your bicycle. You see some stones lying around on the road. What will you do? Will you move on by taking some other turn, or bend, or will you remove the stones so that they may not hurt anybody? Let's find out what a young man does in a similar situation. In the hills of Kerala, there was a famous temple. People respected the priest of this temple. As the priest grew older, he started looking out for a successor who could take charge of the temple after him. But he could not find any suitable person. When will I find my suitable successor? The last day of the old priest finally came. He called for the caretaker of the temple. Shyam, after my death, make sure that only a person with human qualities is chosen as the priest of this temple. In the evening, oh, our beloved priest is no more. The need for a new priest is urgent now. I must call all the hopeful men to attend the interview at the temple. Shyam organized an interview for all the hopeful men for the post of the priest. The day of the interview arrived. Shyam was standing at the topmost point of the hill where the temple was located. A large number of young men are making the steep and dangerous climb. I can test their knowledge of the holy books. But the old priest definitely wanted me to look for something more. By the time the young men reached the temple, they were exhausted. Shyam gave them food and water. When the young men were settled nicely, they were asked to recite verses from the holy scriptures. Each young man was better than the other. They all are perfect. Any one of them would make a good priest. What should I do? Shyam was not able to decide anything. Just then, a tired young man limped into the temple courtyard. He was badly hurt. His clothes were torn in several places. What has happened to you? Have you come for the interview? You are hurt badly. Please, sir, don't worry about me. It is my dearest wish to be the temple priest here. But I know I am very late for the interview. But tell me what happened to you. Were you attacked on your way here? On the route to the temple, the mountain path was full of thorny bushes and sharp stones. So I decided to clear it. Now people can come to the temple without getting hurt on the way. That is why I am late. Shyam was filled with wonder. The old priest's words came back to him. The old priest wanted me to make sure that only a person with human qualities is chosen as the priest of this temple. You are the one whom the old priest wanted to be his successor. You are the chosen one. You are the new priest of this temple. What? What do you mean? Why do you choose this young man who was late for the interview? Today, all of you climbed the same dangerous path to get here. But only one of you thought of his fellow beings and took up the task of clearing the path. He did this to make it easier for those who wish to pray at the temple. As a result, this young man proves out to be better than all of you. Yes, he is right. That's true. We agree. He deserves to be the priest. Thank you, the wise old priest. I would never have known better if not for your words of wisdom. All these fine young men would have made perfect priests, but only one, a truly good human being, could have been your successor. And such a young man has been chosen with your blessing. Chapter 4. The Special Bond of Friendship. Before we begin, animals are kept for various purposes. People keep them as pets, as means of transport, for entertainment, etc. These animals in turn love their masters. Let's read about the beautiful bond of love between Bhola and his Mahout. Once, I had gone to the hospital to see a friend who was ill. As soon as I went in through the main gate, I saw an elephant standing guard outside the entrance. A number of people had crowded around him. Looking at him, I realized that it was Bhola, the temple elephant. But where was his Mahout Rajan? The doctor, whom I knew, told me that Rajan had been admitted to the hospital. He had had a sudden heart attack. He is out of danger now, but he'll have to stay here for at least another week, the doctor said. Bhola had followed his Mahout to the hospital. I saw Nilesh, the assistant Mahout, talking to Bhola. He was trying to take him away. I went up to Nilesh and asked him what had happened to Rajan. Nilesh replied, he was giving Bhola a bath in the river when he complained of a severe pain in the chest. He scrambled out of the water and fainted. I called for help and we brought him to the hospital. And what about Bhola? I asked. Nilesh explained. He saw us taking Rajan and followed us all the way to the hospital. He's been standing here since then. The doctors seem to be unhappy about that, Nilesh. They don't want the elephant in the hospital compound, I told Nilesh. I know, but how can I make him understand that? Said Nilesh. His master Rajan never used a stick or iron to goad him. How can I use them now? Take him to the shade of the trees presently, I said. You may try to take him away later. With great difficulty, Nilesh moved Bhola to the foot of a large tree near the hospital wall. Rajan was discharged a week later. All this while, Bhola waited for him under the tree. He would remain worried and ate nothing. When Rajan became strong enough to walk a little, he went to meet Bhola. The elephant's eyes lit up with joy. He waved his trunk, flapped his ears, and took a few dancing steps. I'm all right, Bhola. I know you have been waiting for me for the whole week, Rajan said, patting him. Don't worry, we can go home now. Then he held out a bunch of bananas, which the elephant gobbled up happily. The onlookers exclaimed, Just look at that, they said. These two are more like brothers than Elephant and Mahout.
Old lady was a little girl. Before we begin, walking across the street or in the park, we see so many old people. Looking at them, it seems they have been like this for always. Do you realize that they were once young, energetic, and full of life? Read the poem and know what the poet thinks about it. That little grey-haired lady is as old can be. Yet once she was a little girl like me. She liked to skip instead of walk. She wore her hair in curls. She went to school at 9 and played with other little girls. I wonder if in years and years some little girl at play, who's very like what I am now, will stop to look my way and think that grey-haired lady is as old can be. Yet once she was a little girl like me.
Chapter 5, The Power of Prayer. Before we begin, do you pray to God? On which occasions do you ask for God's help? Whenever we are helpless in a situation and find little or no hope, we pray to God. All our prayers cannot be answered by God, but that doesn't mean we should stop believing in God. Peter was an English farmer. He had a large field of rice. He sowed the seeds and weeded it carefully. After that, he prayed for rain every day. He wanted to sell his rice so that his family could live on the money for the rest of the year. However, after working hard for many months, he saw that the rice crop had started to wither and bend. This was because there had been no rain that season. He feared that all his hard work would be wasted and he would have no rice to harvest. He felt very sad. Every morning he went out to the field, looked at the standing crop, and prayed for rain. One day, as he stood looking up at the sky hopefully, two little raindrops, Tip and Dip, saw him. Tip said, "Look at that sad farmer. I feel very sorry for him. He worked so hard in his field to grow his rice. But now it's all drying up. I want to help him." "Yes," said Dip, "but we are only 2 little raindrops. Just the 2 of us can't wet such a big field." "Well," said Tip, "I know I cannot do much, but perhaps I can cheer him up a little. I'll go down to the field to show I want to help, even if I can't do anything more. I'm ready." Then, before falling, Tip quickly called out, "Dip, come along with me. If you insist on going, I think I'll come too." With a great shout of joy, the raindrops jumped down. Tip landed on the farmer's nose, and Dip fell on a thirsty plant of rice. "Oh," said Peter, "what's that?" "A raindrop. Where did it come from?" "At last, I do believe we shall have a shower." By this time, many raindrops had come together to see what all the commotion was about. When they saw the 2 kind little drops going down to cheer the sad farmer and to water his rice, one said, "If you 2 are going for such a good cause, I'll come too." And down it came. "Me too," said another. And so they all joined Tip and Dip until a whole shower came down. The rice was watered well. The rice grew and ripened, and Peter rejoiced. All his hard work was finally rewarded, because one little raindrop tried to do whatever little it could. Chapter 6: The Majestic Bird of Evergreen Forest. Before we begin, have you ever been to a forest safari? Forests are rich in a wide variety of plants and animals. These forests help nature in many ways. Human beings benefit from many products that they get from forests. Sadly, due to growing demands, these forests are being cut carelessly. Rainforests are mysterious and magical in nature. You can hear chirpings of a variety of birds here. There are hundreds of birds to be found here. But we are looking for a special group of birds, the hornbills. Hornbills do not have a lining of feathers under their wings like many other birds. So when they fly, the wind rushes through their wings, making a loud whoosh sound. When they land, there is a lot of croaking and barking. There are 54 different types of hornbills found in the world. They are large, colorful birds and mostly live in rainforests. The great Indian hornbill has a golden yellow beak and a helmet-like structure or casque on the head. Soft white feathers decorate the neck and tips of wings. A black band on a white tail completes its look. Males and females look alike, but females are usually smaller with white eyes, while the eyes of males are bright red. All hornbills have throat pouches in which they carry fruit. This way, they do not have to make many trips to collect food. Hornbills stay with one partner for their whole life. They normally find holes in trees and build nurseries in them. Mother hornbills shut themselves in these holes to lay eggs and keep their babies safe. Father hornbills fly around in search of food and bring it for the family. Hornbills are extremely clever and always pick tall trees situated at the edge of forests. From there, they can spot danger and can escape if a hunter comes along. At dawn, they fly off again deep inside the forest for food. Crunching and munching with happiness, they enjoy their favorite food, figs. Besides fruits, hornbills also feed on smaller reptiles and eggs from other birds' nests. Hornbills swallow whole fruit, digesting the fleshy part and spitting out the seeds through their beak. We can easily spot a hornbill's nesting tree by the pile of seeds lying under it. For many rats who come looking for food at night, these seeds are a treat. Nothing in the rainforest is ever wasted. Almost everything that falls on the ground is used by nature. Hornbills are the natural farmers of the forest. They travel long distances, moving from one fruit tree to the next. As they fly, they throw seeds and leave their droppings all over the place. They spread seeds across the forest, allowing new plants to grow. So, the trees look forward to their visits. Hornbills also need these trees to make nests and feed on them. Sadly, these are the same trees that are cut down to create space for human homes, fields, and factories. With rainforests dying out, hornbills feel threatened. Many hornbills are killed for their beautiful beaks and feathers and are trapped to be kept as pets. With so many problems, hornbills are already an endangered species. We must act now to stop hornbills and rainforests from disappearing forever.
Trees are the kindest things. Before we begin, look at the tree in your neighborhood, park, or garden. It seems that it has been there since ages and serves not much purpose. But in reality, we must be thankful to the trees for the benefits they provide to us and other living things. Can you tell some of these benefits? Trees are the kindest things I know. They do no harm, they simply grow. Spread a shade for sleepy cows and gather birds among their boughs. They are the first when day's begun to touch the beams of morning sun. They are the last to hold the light when evening changes into night. And when a moon floats on the sky, they hum a drowsy lullaby of sleepy children long ago. Trees are the kindest things I know.
Chapter 7: How Braille was developed. Before we begin, people with medical, physical, or mental disabilities require help to carry out their everyday tasks. They are also called the people with special needs. To live a normal life, people with special needs are trained and educated in a different way. Read the story of the person who developed a system of writing that is used everywhere by blind people to read specially prepared books. Long time ago, most people thought that blind people could never learn to read. At that time, the only way to read was to look at words with one's eyes. But a young French boy named Louis Braille thought differently. Blind from the age of 3, young Louis desperately wanted to read, and he was determined to find a way of doing this. Louis Braille was born in 1809 in a small village near Paris. His father made leather items to sell to other villagers. Louis' father used sharp tools to cut and shape and punch holes in the leather. One day, while playing with one of his father's sharp tools, Louis' hand slipped and he accidentally poked one of his eyes. At first, the injury didn't seem too serious. But then the wound grew. A few days later, infection spread and the young Louis lost sight in both his eyes. As the days went by, Louis learned to adapt and tried to lead a normal life. He went to school with all his friends and did well in his studies. As he grew older, he realized that the school he attended did not have the special facilities for people like him. He heard of a school in Paris that was especially for blind students. Louis joined this school to get a good education. All along, Louis felt that there must be a way for blind people to read as quickly and as easily as a normal person with eyes. One day, somebody at Louis' school heard about an alphabet code that was being used by the French army. The alphabet code was made up of small dots and dashes. These dots and dashes were raised up off the paper and could be read and understood simply by running one's fingers over them. Louis studied the code and tried it out. It was interesting, but was still difficult to read. The dashes took up a lot of space on the page. Each page could only hold 1 or 2 sentences. Louis knew that he could improve this alphabet in some way, perhaps by removing the dashes. On his next vacation at home, Louis began to think about how he could make the system of dots simple. As he sat there in his father's leather shop, an idea came to him. The very tool which had caused him to go blind could be used to make a raised dot alphabet that would enable him to read. The next few days, he spent working on an alphabet made up entirely of 6 dots. The position of the different dots would represent the different letters of the alphabet. Louis used the tool to punch out a sentence. He read it quickly from left to right. It was a new system of reading by feeling with fingers, and it worked for him. From that day to this, people who are unable to see make use of this system for reading. Named after its inventor, this system is called Braille. Louis Braille has changed the lives of blind people all over the world. Chapter 8: Paralympics, Events for Special Athletes. Before we begin, if a person is disabled, he or she is not capable to use a part of his or her body. Disability can be by birth or as a result of an accident. For most of the people, disability means inability to live a normal life. But there are some who overcome this disability, train themselves hard, and take part in competitive sports. Ben Austin's mother was feeling proud while speaking to her neighbor on the phone. Yes, his event is at 2:30 p.m. You can see him on TV. Thank you once again. I will surely give him your best wishes. Bye. Ben was taking part in a special sporting event called the Paralympics in Beijing, China. He had been participating in the Paralympics since 2000 and had won silver and bronze medals in swimming so far. In 2006, he was ranked first in the World Championships in the 400-meter swimming relay. He had practiced very hard for the event. When Ben was just 2 weeks old, his left arm had to be amputated because of an accident during his birth. His parents prodded him for his love for swimming. He began to love water, and soon he mastered the sport to become an EDA or Elite Disabled Athlete. So what are the Paralympics and how did they begin? In 1948, Sir Ludwig Guttmann, a doctor at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Buckinghamshire, England, organized a sports competition for World War II soldiers who had suffered serious injuries during the war. Some had even lost the use of their limbs. Some had to have their limbs cut off. However, they wanted to do things that normal people did. So they learned to play certain games while sitting in a wheelchair or using artificial limbs. Soon, they were ready to take part in wheelchair races, and the first sports event for the disabled took place. Archery, athletics, badminton, boccia, para-canoe, cycling road, cycling track, equestrian, football, 5-a-side, goal ball, judo, powerlifting, rowing, shooting, sitting volleyball, swimming, table tennis, para taekwondo, para triathlon, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair fencing, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair tennis. At first, these games were known as the Stoke Mandeville Games. Other countries too followed their example and encouraged their injured soldiers to participate in sports. 4 years later, competitors from the Netherlands joined the games, and it began to be called the annual International Stoke Mandeville Games. Earlier, only sports like running on artificial legs, swimming, and wheelchair races were played. Soon, other games for athletes with disabilities were also organized. Then, in 1960, for the first time, the Olympics and the International Stoke Mandeville Games were held together in Rome, where they began to be called the Paralympics. Eventually, the Summer and the Winter Paralympics began to be held separately, just like the Olympics. Today, the Paralympics show what the participants can do despite their disabilities. The competitions had started with just a few games, but today, disabled athletes participate in a number of sporting events. The number of athletes participating in the Summer Paralympics has increased from 400 athletes from 23 countries in Rome in 1960 to 4,403 athletes from 162 countries at the last Paralympics in Tokyo, Japan 2021, which were held from the 24th of August to 5th of September 2021. Ben has experienced many triumphant moments till this day. Ben and his team did win the gold for the 4x100 meter swimming relay at Summer Olympics 2008 in Beijing. He also won a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games 2010 in New Delhi.
I'll touch the sky. Before we begin, what do you want to become when you grow up? A teacher, a doctor, an engineer, or an astronaut? Read the poem to know what the young speaker wants to become and do when he or she grows up. I don't know why I want to be an astronaut. Floating in the sky, I know it can be dangerous, but I still want to fly. Higher than an eagle, higher than a plane, higher than the wind can reach. Even higher than the rain, hovering in my rocket, staring at the stars, looking for a planet such as Jupiter or Mars. Landing on the moon, bouncing, having fun, then leaping in my rocket, streaking past the sun. In my dreams, flying high, someday I know I'll touch the sky.
Chapter 9, The Delayed Reward. Before we begin, in the ancient times, kings would take important decisions for their kingdom based on the advice given by their ministers. Even decisions on punishment and reward were discussed with them. Do you think taking help from others in taking decisions is right? Does it make you appear to be a sensible person or a dependent one? Scene 1. A winter morning, Akbar and Birbal are pacing the floor in the palace balcony. The balcony offers a good view of the Yamuna river. Akbar says, "Birbal, I have heard that the water of this river is very cold. Is that true?" Birbal said, "Yes, Your Majesty. I have also heard the same." Akbar said, "What do you think will happen if a man stands in the cold water all through the night? Birbal said, "Your Majesty, no ordinary man can survive after staying for such a long time in the cold water. He will definitely die." Akbar thinks for a while and says, "I have an idea." The emperor whispers something in Birbal's ear. Scene 2. In the afternoon, at the town marketplace, a messenger beats his drum loudly. People come leaving their work and gather around him. Messenger says loudly, "Listen, listen, listen. By the order of the emperor, anyone who stands in the cold water of the river in front of the king's palace all through the night will be amply rewarded." He moves to another busy area to make the same announcement. People stand in groups and discuss it. Nobody is ready to accept the tough challenge. A poor washerman named Bhima also listens to the announcement and whispers softly in his wife's ear. Bhima says, "Savitri, this is a good opportunity. I should try my luck. If I succeed in standing in the river, I'll get the big reward and we'll be able to live well." Savitri says, "No, don't ever think of taking such a risk." Bhima says, "Nothing will happen to me. After all, I used to wash clothes in cold water every day." Scene 3. At night, the washerman goes and stands in the middle of the river. Some people come to see him. First man says, "I feel sorry for this poor man. Why does he want to kill himself?" Second man says, "He is crazy, doing such a foolish thing for money. Let us pray for his safety." Next morning, Bhima is shivering badly. He had stood in the river all through the night. People congratulate him on his wonderful achievement. Savitri says happily, "Oh, you have done it. Thank God you are all right. I was so worried. I kept on praying for your safety the whole night. Now you are the luckiest person to get the big reward. I'm really proud of you." Scene 4. Akbar's court. The emperor is sitting on his throne. Birbal is sitting beside him. The courtiers and guards are standing by. Bhima and his family enter the court. Bhima says, "Salutations, Your Majesty. May you live long." Akbar says, "Come, you are indeed a brave young man. You deserve the reward." A servant brings a silver tray laden with gold coins. As Akbar is about to give the reward to Bhima, a courtier interrupts. The courtier says, "Your Majesty, what are you doing? This man does not deserve the reward. He did not stand in the cold water without any help." All the courtiers were surprised and wanted an explanation. The courtier says, "Your Majesty, the lights from your place kept the washerman warm all through the night." Akbar thoughtfully says, You have a point. Well, in that case, there is no question of a reward." Poor Bhima goes away sadly with his family. Birbal is unhappy about the outcome. Scene 5. The next day at Akbar's court, all are sitting, but Birbal's seat is empty. Akbar says, "Why has Birbal not come yet? He is usually punctual." A messenger arrives. The messenger says, "Your Majesty, the minister is in his house and he says he will be late today." Akbar asks why. The messenger says, "Your Majesty, he is cooking and will take long to prepare the food." Akbar says angrily, "What nonsense! We shall go and find out right now." Akbar gets up and walks briskly towards Birbal's house, followed by some courtiers and guards. Scene 6. Birbal's house. Birbal is sitting near a fire on the ground. High above it, balanced on a tall tripod, is a cooking pot. Akbar says, Birbal, how can you be so silly? You have placed the pot so high above the fire. How can this fire cook your food ever? Birbal says, with a twinkle in his eye, if this fire can't cook the food in this cooking pot, how can the lights of your palace warm Bhima standing in the cold water of the river? Akbar realizes that he has taken a wrong decision. He sends for the washerman. Next day, at Akbar's court, Bhima comes again with his family. Akbar hands the tray of gold coins to Birbal, who gives it to Bhima. Bhima and his family are very happy. People cheer and clap.